Coming up on News 13, we'll preview a double murder trial that is set to begin on Monday. The fire department made a call out this morning to the Old Talbot Tavern. We'll chat with the daughter of legendary actor Don Knotts about her show coming to Bardstown tomorrow. We preview a number of other weekend events, and Forrest is in the building. Stay tuned. All right, we are here with Karen Knotts, and Karen has the show Tied Up in Knots, going to be at Nelson County High School tomorrow evening. And tell us a little bit about your background, and you are the daughter of Don Knotts, the late Don Knotts, and is just I can imagine many people have a lot of questions about that. You know, he's a great famous character in American television, so it's just what's the main question people get you about your life growing up?
Okay, well, the main question I'm asked is your dad like Barney Fife? And I get asked that quite a few times. So sometimes I also do stand-up comedy, and I like to pull their leg a little bit. I'll say, oh yeah, my dad was very strict. He'd say, Karen? He'd put his hands on his hips so I could see the gun, and say, going upstairs, do your homework, brush your teeth, and don't hang out with those bad kids on the Brady Bunch. But he actually wasn't like Barney Fife, only at moments, like if he would get emotional or something like that. Mm-hmm. But in real life, my dad was actually kind of a quiet person, and a very sophisticated guy and everything. But he loved people, and he loved, he would just study people, and they'd come up to him like we'd be at a restaurant or something, and they'd be so terrified. Mr. Knotts, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And he'd go, yes? Like, what? I'm here. What do you want? And he would just talk to them, and it was just great.
Yeah, and I would imagine that happened a lot. I mean, just going out to a restaurant or anything like that. So
it did, and because we lived in, Beverly Hills or Los Angeles, and the people, you could tell when they were from the Midwest because they were so respectful. And they, you could tell that they had worked up the nerve to come over, and they'd finally come over. And then they would be so amazed at how nice he was and everything.
Yeah, and I was telling you off camera, too, that probably my favorite Don Knotts character was on No Time for Sergeants with Andy Griffith. And it was actually just a kind of a thing where Andy Griffith had to do the rings or whatnot.
Well, I talk about that in my show, Tied Up in Knots, which, as you know, I'm doing this Saturday night. That was my dad's first break in show business. He got the part on No Time for Sergeants. He was just a jobbing actor in New York, and Andy Griffith was the star of that. And my dad got this little part. Actually, he did two little parts because he also played Andy Griffith's pa, an old-timer who told tall tales. He was just incredible.
Wait a minute, time out. I did not know that. I've seen that movie. I've seriously
not in
seen
the movie. Not in the movie.
Okay,
no.
I was gonna say
that was in the play.
Oh, okay,
so they did
interesting.
the Broadway version.
Okay, interesting.
And that's when they first met.
Okay.
Andy and my
awesome.
dad. Yeah.
Very neat. Very neat. So your show is based on, you say, growing up, in the Knotts family and branching out from that. So.
Well, I talk about from the beginning, before I was born, because I've heard stories, my dad told stories about what it was like to grow up, an old-timer who told tall tales. He was just incredible.
Wait a minute, time out. I did not know that. I've seen that movie. I've seriously
not in
seen
the movie. Not
okay,
in the movie.
Okay,
no.
I was gonna say
that was in the play.
Oh, okay,
so they did
interesting.
the Broadway version.
Okay, interesting.
And that's when they first met.
Okay.
Andy and my
awesome.
dad. Yeah.
Very neat. Very neat. So your show is based on, you say, growing up, in the Knotts family and branching out from that. So.
Well, I talk about from the beginning, before I was born, because I've heard stories, my dad told stories about what it was like to grow up. He was very poor, and he lived in Morgantown, West Virginia, and it was a university town, but they were like just really hard times. His mother ran a boarding house to make ends meet. And so I heard all these stories growing up, and I thought, what great, this would be great to tell to people in a show. And I talk about all that, and then I talk about how my dad moved into New York and started to pursue an acting career, and what it was like in the days of live television, which is so different. It was a completely different, culture and everything as far as what that was like. I mean, can you imagine going out and doing a show and knowing that it's live and there's no going back? If you make a mistake, tough.
That's right.
Everybody in the country is going to see that show with the mistake right on there, you know. And so and there was this enormous pressure all the time. So I talk about that, and you know, and I think that it's really interesting for young people too, because you get a perspective on what it was like in the past, and to learn about these older shows and how everything evolved. Like in the 50s, most of the TV shows were shot in New York. It was all on the East Coast.
Okay.
And it wasn't until, you know, in the late 50s where they all started moving out to California. So I talk about that. And then I talk about how, you know, he started gaining traction when he got on the Andy Griffith Show. And I got to go on the set of the Andy Griffith Show and meet those characters and what they were like as real people. I talk about that. And it was just really amazing. And then my dad recorded a comedy album called An Evening with Me, and some funny stories about my brother and I, how we tried to sell those albums. We were little kids, tried to sell those albums on the street corner. Mm-hmm. And we actually did sell them.
Awesome. Now, you even mentioned it, but I mean, what are the age ranges of people who are quite interested in this? Because I mean, I know our age range is, but I mean, I'm sure.
Well, you also probably grew up watching Three's Company at your age,
a little bit,
right?
yeah,
A little bit?
but
Okay.
even more so the Andy Griffith Show. So.
Yes. Well, like I said, you probably know as well as I do. I mean, people are still watching the show. It's, you know, broadcast everywhere. In Los Angeles, we have it on TV Land, and you have it here. So people are familiar with the show, and my dad, you know, I always ask the audience, do you think I look like my dad? And they go, well, I don't know. And then I go, okay, what about now? I do the face, and everybody knows that face, you know, from somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and maybe the ghost in Mr. Chicken. He made that face a lot in Ghost in Mr. Chicken. Yeah, that's right. So,
he did.
How long have you been doing the show?
I've been doing the show, well, actually, when my father passed away, I started doing the show. Mm-hmm. So it's been about 4 or 5 years now. Okay. And I started doing a lot more. Like, I have some shows coming up in Louisiana in October. I'm going to be doing it in North Carolina in September. And I have a website, which is just KarenKnotts.com, where people can go to see, you know, my schedule, my tour schedule. And it's really pretty exciting.
Awesome. Very interesting. So, you know, it's a tribute to your dad as well in all of this. But has this taken you a lot of places? You said Louisiana. It's taken you all over the country.
It has. I've even done the show in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Which they don't even have the Andy Griffith Show there. I didn't know that when I went to Edinburgh, Scotland. But they still love the show. So that showed me that I had a good show on its own, you know. And then I'm going to Kansas later this year. I've been to West Virginia, done the show there. I've done it in lots of states, and I'm California, of course, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, we're glad to have you in Bardstown, and again, you'll be at the Nelson County High School Auditorium, Tied Up in Knots, the show, and the show starts at 6 p.m. The pre-show music is by the Kentucky Wheelers. That starts at 5:30. And your show starts at 6. 66% of all the ticket sales will go to benefit the Nelson County High School Band of Pride. So go on out there and benefit them and go see a great show. Tickets are at the door for $20, and you can also get tickets by calling 502-507-4622. Awesome. We are definitely looking forward to the show, and we're glad to have you in Bardstown.
And I'm thrilled to be here. It's a beautiful town, just like they say.
Right. Most beautiful small town in America. We might not hold that title per se anymore, but we were named that last year. Yes. So it was a pretty big honor. We're going to hold that forever. So
yes.
But awesome, Karen. Thank you for being with us here at PLG.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that'll do it for News 13 for this evening. Remember to follow us streaming live and archived on PLGTV.com, on Facebook, and on Twitter. I'm Matthew Fogel, and I celebrate a birthday on Sunday. See you next time, and the next time you see me, I'll be this old.